Hi ladies, hi gentlemen. Here we are into our, second month of this pandemic and doing our videos for substance abuse class. I'll be honest, today's is one that I talk about a lot, but it's one that I'm actually kind of have the hardest trouble putting together. Because today, after our 5 deep breaths, we are going to talk about the F word. Not that F word. That one you have no trouble talking about. In fact, most of our culture has no trouble talking about now. But the F word we're going to talk about today is feelings. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, I can just hear the groans already. Let me start my little timer and then we will do our start. And then we will do our 5 deep breaths. So it's funny because during this time of sheltering in place and safer at home and trying to reduce the risk and all of that, I'm not wearing a mask on these tapes, but certainly other places. I hope you're all wearing your masks, washing your hands, doing those kinds of things. And also, but keeping yourself mentally safe too by not letting all the negativity just keep running around in your head. So that's what we're going to talk about. And one thing that there's been a lot of people doing things to help folks get more mindful during this time to decrease stress, because when you decrease stress, you help your immune system. So suddenly mindfulness and meditation, I'm getting emails like, hey, you can have this free mindfulness, thing, a free 10-minute meditation, a free 20-minute meditation. So here's a time where you can say, hey, we've already been doing this mindfulness thing for a while. My husband did say the other day, he finds it very hard to meditate. And he did say to me, well, when you do that breathing thing with your class, maybe you should tell them all the benefits. And I just kind of laughed inside my head because I think we've talked a lot at different times about how it really activates the vagus nerve. And when you activate that nerve, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you rest and digest, tend and befriend, all of those kinds of things. So it really does help you calm down. It helps you heal, and it helps your immune system and all those kinds of things. So we do it for that. We also do it to put what the Buddhists call the monkey mind, but what we call in here sometimes, your hamster on the wheel. It keeps that, Daniel Amen, the brain guy, would call it the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. It really helps you with that thought process. And so as we talk about feelings, and then we're going to talk about cognitive distortions and restructuring thought, and just in these videos, as you see woven in, there's just going to be all kinds of topics that come up again. So whether you're joining us for the first time, or the 51st time, or the 101st time, welcome to class. So when we do our 5 deep breaths, usually we do in for about 7, we hold it for 4, we do out for about 8, and then we rest. It's not a perfect number. Some people do 5 in, 5 out. There's a square kind of breathing that the Navy SEALs like to use, which is 5 in, or 4 in, 4 rest, 4 out, 4 rest, etc. So you can do any combination of that, but it's the mindfulness where you notice the breath going in and out of your body. And when other things happen, when thoughts come up, when distractions come up, when noises come up, you just kind of label them and then you let them float away. You can imagine clouds drifting by. I like to imagine them just floating by, like on a stream of water, because we also, in the craving section, we call it urge surfing, that when cravings come up, instead of grabbing onto them, and writing them down to the point where you're using, you just let those cravings drift by. So it's that same kind of non-attachment. Don't get attached to everything you think. Because quite honestly, some of what we think is not true. In fact, a lot of what we tell ourselves is not even true, not based in reality. So 5 deep breaths. So nice deep breath in. And out. And in. Out. Be interesting to see what this is like with this microphone on. And in. and out. Last two, in and out. And in, out. Can certainly tell it's getting warmer outside. I've got the lights on and it's hot. So one thing that we call addiction sometimes is the disease of more, like more, 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 more. There's never enough, never enough, never enough. Great book, by the way, about addictions called Never Enough. But it's that more, 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 more. And the problem with addiction is there is no such thing as enough. There is always this insatiable need for more, and that's part of your dopamine system. It's the seeking, seeking, seeking system. But really, part of what this disease of more masks is a deeper truth. And that deeper truth is what Viktor Frankl would call man's search for meaning, right? A person's search for meaning. Because we as humans, we are meaning makers. So when sometimes we don't know what our dreams are. We don't know what our purpose is. We're not clear on things. And especially if we grew up in a situation where we were not good with knowing not knowing what our feelings were, what our emotions were, what our truth was, what our reality was, because we're so busy reacting to everything, that sometimes we don't want these questions of, what's my purpose? What's my meaning? What's bigger here? What's my bigger story? And so to distract us, and some of the times it's like, oh crap, a story, my real story, my truth might mean I have to make some hard choices. Well, I don't want to do that. So how can I get away from it? Oh, I can distract, right? And sometimes this distraction, that more, 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 our culture says, get more things, get bigger houses, get nicer cars, get more clothes, get more makeup, get whatever the deal is. So, it might be that distracts you from having to really sit with what's going on inside of me. And obviously any distraction taken to the extreme can become an addiction. So as we start this talk about emotions and feelings and those kinds of things, let's do a couple terms first. So remember, emotions are energy in motion. And we say energy in motion, this is not just some intellectual concept. Literally, emotions are body-based sensations. This is the chemical, biological, neurological, electrical, all of these things that happen in our body that create these things called emotions, right? So it's energy and motion throughout our body, and it is an information system. Emotions are meant to give us information. Now, the interesting thing is we have an emotional part of our brain. We've talked about that limbic system that rings the brain, and it touches both your higher order thinking brains and your brainstem part, so it really integrates things. We need emotions because emotions give us meaning and motivation to life. Emotions tell us this is important, right? This has meaning. It also says, hey, I'm willing to do something here, right? So meaning and motivation are important parts about emotions, and they're meant to be there. But if you don't just think of emotions as being in your brain, because while that part of your nervous system definitely uses them and informs other parts of your brain, and it's a two-way street. Your emotions inform your brain, your thoughts feed back to your emotions, so it's this big feedback loop. But those chemicals, those molecules of emotion are everywhere in your body. You actually have more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain. But we know serotonin has a lot to do with depression. So energy, emotion, that's that body-based thing of we get these emotions going. And actually, if you look on if we got the science geeks, these are neurohormones, meaning, neuro deals with your nervous system, right? Hormones are chemical messengers. These are chains of amino acids. These are proteins that are present throughout our bodies and that affect every cell of our body. That's why stress can affect your physical health, right? It's not something separate from you. It's part of who you are. And emotions help regulate the way our entire organism works. And when we don't deal with emotions, we're not letting our organism, ourselves, we're not letting ourselves function the way we should. And that's when we find out, oh, I don't know what my goals are. I don't know what my dreams are. Or maybe we know what they are, but we're like, how come I can never reach them? How come I self-sabotage? How come I don't have the connections I want in my life? And remember, connection is not just nice to have. Connection is necessary to have, right? Humans are hardwired. We're hardwired and chemically made, etc., for emotions, and we are hardwired for connection. We need connection. It is a part of us. There's an author, Terry Real, who says when he does talks and people say, like, well, Terry, you talk about connection as if it's some sort of panacea, and people, I think, are expecting him to say, no, I mean, it's important. I'm not saying it's really the panacea for relationships and for being a healthy human. And he's like, he just looks at him and says, yeah, guess what? It's a panacea. It is a solution, right? So connection really is our solution. Belonging is our solution. Belonging to ourselves, belonging to a bigger group, belonging to some meaning bigger than us. So this is a very important part of us. And when you think about it, why would we have feelings in the first place? Well, these body-based sensations, they alert us to things in our environment. So think way back, we always talk about the days of, like saber-toothed tigers or whatever. This gave us that sense of what's wrong with this picture? I feel danger, I feel fear, I feel risk. Ooh, I feel, excitement seeing someone. I feel attraction, right? We're going to keep things going. I feel an emotion toward this newborn baby. All of these kinds of things are meant to cue us into this is important. Feelings help point out to us what's important. And the problem is, now sometimes people say, okay, but my feelings have been hurt so much, right? I mean, my feelings have been disregarded, ignored. It was too hard to have them as a kid. Maybe you went through trauma, abuse, sexual abuse. You witnessed stuff. You had a chaotic background. All of those things that create trauma make feelings seem pretty not okay, right? And so what a lot of people do is, well, I don't like these feelings, and especially we don't like pain, right? So what do? Well, I want to get rid of the pain because I don't know how to deal with it, and it's just too much for me. So I'm going to numb the pain, or stuff down the pain, or repress the pain, or whatever negative emotions that we have. The problem with emotions, and I use the paper example, right? Very thin sheet of paper that doesn't have two sides. Here's the thing. If I asked you to write down on one side all the negative emotions you can think of, and I wish you were in the room because we would have you list out all these negative emotions like, oh, embarrassment, mistrusted or mistrustful, scared, nervous, irritated, any negative feeling, shame, right? All these negative feelings, if you could list them all on one side of the paper, right? And then if I had you turn over and say, okay, now list all the positive emotions, right? Curiosity, engagement, surprise. And surprise is different than, shock, right? But surprise, enjoyment, delight. You could list all these positives on the other side, happiness, joy, etc. And then I said to you, okay, throw out the negatives. Well, some people are like, well, was I supposed to write it different where I could rip the paper in half and throw out the negatives and keep the positives? Some people say, well, what if I got something that could slice this paper really, really, really thin, right? There'd still be two sides of the paper. The problem is, because you could never get, if I said, well, no matter how you slice it, there's going to be the negatives on one side and the positives on the other. If you want to throw out the negative feelings, what gets thrown out with them? The positive feelings. So that's why there's often this numbing of the negative feelings. I'm getting away from pain. I won't feel things. But then we've numbed the positives. And then what do people do? Well, people often go for, how am I going to get some sensation back in my life? So it might be thrill seeking. It might be extreme sports. But it certainly might be the love of money, the love of the game, right? The addiction to the game. It might be controlling other people, right? That gives me some feeling. May not be the greatest feeling, may not be what I'm born to have, but I may go for that. Certainly drugs and alcohol, right? attempts to create or change a feeling or not deal with a feeling. So it's like then you get the fake feelings, which are not, they're just, they're sensations. They last a little while. But if they really fix the feelings, you wouldn't have to keep doing it, right? That's the problem. You may think, well, but, Darla, makes me feel good. It makes me relax. I feel really good for a while. I feel non-stressed. I can sleep or whatever. But then the stuff comes back. So that's the problem with any kind of addiction, substances, behavioral, whatever, and any kind of attempt to not deal with the feelings. Now, meaning and motivation, they make us take action, and I'm using emotions and feelings interchangeably, and really though, there's probably a bit of a difference. Emotions are those body-based physical sensations. So numb, tingly, hot, cold, that gut feeling. You might feel like a wrenching in your gut, or sometimes when things are happy, you feel kind of an expansiveness in your center, right? You just feel really open, or whatever the deal is. So feelings or emotions are really body-based sensations. And often, if we're getting real technical, the feelings are the awareness that we put to those sensations. So if we really tune in and get aware of our body-based sensations, now we're talking feelings. Now we're actually putting a word to it, putting a label to it, identifying it. And that's also when we put meanings to it. So it's like, that tingling on the back of my neck means I don't trust someone. Or that sweating in my hands means I'm really feeling shame, right? Or whatever the deal is. So you have those sensations, then you can start putting the feeling words to them. Because once you've put the words to them, then you can decide what meaning to make of them. Because a lot of times what happens, physical sensation happens, and before we're even aware of it, and sometimes even just outside of our awareness, we start spinning and making up all these things about it. We create all these meanings. Let me tell you about someone the other day. So someone said, oh my God, my sponsor wants to talk to me, or wanted to talk to me after the meeting today. And here on the outside, I've helped some people set up some Zoom meetings. So 12-step meetings are meeting by Zoom, right? Which is a digital platform. And my sponsor wanted to talk to me after the meeting, but I had to go. And so now my sponsor and I still haven't talked. And then I tried calling my sponsor, and my sponsor wasn't available, and now we're going to talk tomorrow, but I don't know what's going on. So here's what happened is, there was a situation, right? There was an event. Sponsor says, hey, can I talk to you for a couple minutes right after the meeting? Okay. And then the person says, I've got another meeting I've got to be at. I can't do it now. Can we talk later? Okay. And then later, the sponsor couldn't talk and says, let's talk tomorrow. Now, what does this person do with this event? Sponsor wants to talk. Okay. Person got gut feeling, right? Gut feeling, or gut emotion, but that gut thing turns into this feeling in the head of, my sponsor wants to talk. Oh my God, something must be wrong. And here's what the person thought. Maybe, I'm checking my time, maybe I have been a bad sponsee. And they made up this meaning. My sponsor wants to talk to me because I haven't been doing my 4-step well enough, and my sponsor is going to fire me. Right? A whole big meaning was put to that. And I said, this is where we can talk to ourselves, pay attention to our sensations, pay attention to the inner chatter, the narration that we put to the story. So when I said pay attention to that inner chatter, then I said, okay, so one option. Sponsor wants to talk to you, sponsor's going to fire you. Okay? I said, give me 5 other things it could be. 5 other things. Yeah. Maybe the sponsor picked up on something you said in the meeting and just wants to check in with you. Is that a possibility? Maybe. Okay. Maybe the sponsor has something going on in their life, and maybe they need to reschedule a time that, if you normally meet once a week, maybe they need to reschedule that phone call, right? Maybe your sponsor has something going on that they want to talk to you about. Maybe it's a logistical thing. Maybe it's setting up a time for you to meet, or maybe it's people are talking right now about when can meetings start in person again. Maybe your sponsor wants your opinion on when it would be safe to start having these meetings of, who knows? It could be, how many things could it be? Right? How many things could it be? And it could be any of them. So until you actually check it out and try to figure it out for real, you don't know. So that's what we do a lot of times. We hear something, we have an event, a situation, someone says something, or a person, and we react a lot of times automatically without thinking about it. So we get this emotional response, we might get a certain feeling. Then we put all this stuff to it. We make all this stuff up. Brene Brown uses the words, it's an old social work thing, the story I'm telling myself is, right? And then based on that, then we get all these feelings. Now I might be apprehensive, and now I might be pissed off at my sponsor. Well, who does my sponsor think they are anyways? I've been doing a really good, we might do all this stuff that has nothing to do with anyone else. And a lot of times, we even outsource our feelings by saying stuff like, she made me mad. He pissed me off. Man, whatever the deal is. Whenever you try to have someone else be responsible for your feelings, that's a sign that you are really trying to stay away from those feelings instead of dealing with them and having them inform you, having them say, hey, I got a weird feeling here. I need to check this out. What's going on? If you're a parent, you might know sometimes like, something going on with my kid. Doesn't mean you're always right. You could be way off base, but sometimes you might have to check on some things, right? So, we often default to people, places, or situation causing our feelings, but remember, our feelings are our interpretation of our emotions. Now, addiction is often called a feeling disease, right? Dis-ease. You don't have a sense of ease around your feelings. And I wrote some stuff down because I want to remember to say some things. Addiction is about a pattern of avoiding your emotional process and handing it over to someone or something else. So instead of owning what's going on with me, right, addiction hands it over to someone or something else. I'm now under the control of the addiction. I don't get to have my part in this whole story. And here's the, we've talked about this before too, but some people might be new. Here's the problem. In the beginning, the things you become addicted to. So in the beginning, substances are often an attempt at a solution. My life is too painful. My parents are too crazy. I've got this mental illness. Whatever the deal is, I'm using those addictions to cope. So at the beginning, they're an attempt at a solution. And at the beginning, they might even work for a while. They provide a certain coping mechanism. The problem is after a while, the addiction takes on a life of its own. Because once you're not just using a substance occasionally, right? Once it becomes an addiction, or once your patterns of behavior are addictions, now they're running the show. Because once the addiction is running that dopamine system, its goal, it has hijacked you in terms of your goals. Its goal is not to keep you alive, to keep your relationships alive, to keep your hopes and dreams and plans alive. The addiction's job becomes to keep the addiction alive. And it doesn't matter if it kills your dreams. It doesn't matter if it kills your relationships. It doesn't even matter if it kills you. Just a few days ago, Melissa Etheridge lost her 21-year-old son to an opioid addiction, and then there's another 16-year-old star of some shows who just died of an opioid addiction yesterday. So we're losing lots of people to things like that, where at a certain point it's like, well, the addiction just keep getting it, go, 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 right? That kind of thing. The other thing is when we use distractions, and they can be distractions all the way to addictions. It is using something outside of yourself to try to fix something inside of yourself. You will never fix your inside stuff with outside stuff. Your inside issues, your emotions, your feelings can't be fixed with outside stuff. The bigger house won't make you happy. The new wife won't make you happy. The new cabana boy won't make you happy on the other side. That Michael Kors purse won't make you happy. That car won't make you happy. Those drugs won't do it for you. Again, we might use some medication-assisted treatment to help you balance some stuff, but even with medication, you're going to have to deal with your feelings. Now, when we talk about feelings, what do we mean? Now, you guys know in parenting, we talk about the four basic, and I'm talking very basic emotions: mad, sad, glad, and scared. That's about as basic as you can get. Pretty universal. Humans feel mad, sad, glad, and scared. The capacity for that. Now, people have, I have these lists here. You don't even have to read them, but I have these lists here in front of me that people have tried to come up with universal core emotions. And most people come up with about 6 or 7. Our friend Brene Brown talks about 30. I'm going to list 7 of them. And the reason I'm going to do this, and then I'll add a couple more for some other people, it's just because I want to show you this image that then when we're back in person, we can actually work with this. Because out of these basic emotions, mad, sad, glad, and scared, you can really combine them into all kinds of different feelings. And that's the thing. As the more you grow and the more you develop as a human being, actually the more complex these emotions get. When you think about a baby, their emotions are pretty basic because their needs are pretty basic. But as they go on and they're getting bigger and they're interacting with people, what you see is you get all these nuances of feelings. And so we learn to deal with all of those. Plutchik lists joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, anticipation, anger, and distrust. And most researchers would probably add disgust and contempt, because these are things that we can kind of measure in micro expressions on people's faces cross-culturally and, despite different genders, etc. But those are the basics, right? And what I wanted to show you, now, again, you don't have to memorize this. I don't know how much the camera's picking up or how you can read it clearly. But what it shows is that this wheel of emotion says that there can be different levels of feelings, and feelings can combine to form different feelings. So you might have a little bit, you might be a little bit happy. So you might wake up one day and you say, I'm feeling content today, right? I'm feeling content. Now, other days you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, my joy is just overflowing. I am joyful, right? It even it's like full of joy. I am joyful. It's just overflowing. Or you might be ecstatic. Ecstatic is kind of like I'm joy plus excitement. Wow, this is really amazing, right? Same thing. I could be annoyed, or I could be irritated, or I could be enraged, right? So with feelings, what you do is, and start with the basics. What we know is most adults only name several feelings that they feel most of the time. And by adulthood, you should have a rich emotional vocabulary. Now, why? Why do we want you to identify, name, and be able to describe what you're feeling in terms of a rich emotional vocabulary? Because it really does help you with that meaning creation, and it helps you figure out, how am I going to cope with this, right? And usually we start around, I just have my 1-year-old granddaughter. I saw her for the first time in 2 months. I've been doing mostly FaceTime with her. I have been doing FaceTime with her for 2 months. And now I'm going to see the 2-year-old. We've been doing lots of safe at home things, so we're feeling like it's a pretty safe risk. But with the 2-year-old, what are we saying to a 2-year-old? And what do I hope you were saying to your 2-year-olds on the outside, or that you got told when you were 2? This is where we start saying to kids, hey, use your words and not your fists, right? Or they'll go, for something, and we say, hey, use your words. What do you want? You want this? You want that? We want them to start labeling those things because it helps them get a handle on it. With a label, you kind of have a handle of, oh, I can deal with this, right? And they learn it's not just this big, overwhelming thing. It's like, oh, that's what, and here's a big one, disappointment. That's what disappointment feels like. Human beings need to learn how to handle disappointment because we're disappointed usually multiple times a day. Now, if we go on the explanation of oh my God, I should never be disappointed. This is not fair. Life sucks. Everyone's against me, blah, 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 blah. It's going to go badly. But if we go yeah, I'm disappointed with breakfast here again at the jail, right? And what am I going to do with it? That gives us a way of dealing with it, right? So, big statement. What you resist persists. I know we've talked about this in other ones too. If you resist dealing with your feelings, they will come back even harder. So not dealing with your emotions doesn't make them go away. It just makes them go underground, go sideways, or intensify. So if you've ever noticed that, if you just try to push a feeling away, it just tends to want to keep coming up and coming up and coming up and coming up. It's kind of like ignoring that kid who's going, mama, 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 mommy, mommy, mom, 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 right? If the more you ignore it, it tends to get louder. It tends to come out in all different ways. So you need an emotional vocabulary and a strategy for dealing with emotions. So first job, develop an emotional vocabulary. So what I'd like you to do for homework, and we'll do this when we get back together in person, and it's going to be a whole new world when we get back together in person. It will probably be very small groups, and that's going to be hard because people, and maybe by pod, and people are like, well, I used to be able to go to class twice a week, and now there's only 5 of us in the room, and we only get called every few weeks because we have to give everybody a chance. So that's why I want to give you some homework on some of these videos as well, where you can actually be doing some of this work. You can get a lot of work done in here. So first of all, in terms of an emotional vocabulary, do a body scan a few times a day and say, what am I feeling? And if you don't know, start with sensations. Like I said, hot, cold, tingly, numb, expansive, constricted. Think of words that describe, tight, loose, whatever the deal is. Think of words that describe the body sensations and then try to put feeling words to them. And if you got to, start with the basics, sad, mad, glad, or scared, and then start coming up with other feelings. Oh, is this scared or apprehensive, right? Scared might be, oh God, I heard a sound in the other room, and apprehensive is, boy, I'm taking on this new thing, or I've got this court date coming up, and I've got a new lawyer, and I don't know how that's going to go, right? So start developing your emotional vocabulary. And one easy exercise is sit down and write a list of every single feeling word you can think of. That will start cueing you in to use your emotional vocabulary. And then get some strategies for using emotions effectively to influence your actions, where you can say, okay, I feel this, and how am I going to handle that feeling so I can do what I need to do? So you might feel apprehensive, and how am I going to hold my hand through this apprehension? How am I going to get support for myself? How am I going to deal with that apprehension so I can effectively help with my case in court, if court is the thing, or so I can effectively deal with this sentence if I get sentenced, so I can talk to my kids about what this means for their lives, or whatever the deal is, right? So that you can actually start doing some strategizing. So get this big feeling list. I want you to notice your feelings. I want you to name your feelings, and then start trying to understand your feelings. Oh, why might I be feeling this in this situation? Is there anything I can do to help with that? Is it telling me to take action on something? Is it telling me that this has some meaning, right? So putting it through those questions. And last little thing, yeah, and getting curious. I have several pieces, but we're out of time on this one. We'll just keep working it into other ones. But one thing I did want to say is that when we disown our pain, when we try to just act like we don't have our pain or forget painful incidents in our past, we tend to transmit that pain to others. So if we're not feeling our pain, we tend to create situations where other people feel our pain. Meaning, I might be really harsh with my spouse, my Sally, my kids, right? We tend to transmit that pain. And we often transmit it most to the people we care about the most. So our pain now just becomes something, that's where I said it goes sideways. So if I'm not dealing with my pain, sometimes I create pain for people around me. Because remember, hurt people, right? So we want to stop this transmission process. The other thing is when you're in touch with your emotions and you can identify your emotions, you can also draw appropriate boundaries from other people's emotions. When other people are trying to transmit their pain to you and have you take on their shame or their pain or whatever their anger, whatever their deal is, you can have those good boundaries if you know what your genuine